And we're live with the Pitch Wars live show. Thank you for joining us today, everyone. Tonight we have the wonderful adult and new adult mentors. And I know you guys want to get to it right away, so I'm not even going to introduce myself because I'm not important. We're going to just start it off with Brighton.
Sorry, I had to unmute my microphone. Hi, I'm Brighton. I write contemporary romance and romantic suspense in adult and new adult. I've been published since 2013, and I have 8 books out. My 8th just got published January. So, should I say what I'm looking for now, or just me?
Yes, say what you're looking for, too.
Oh, okay. So I'm looking for adult and new adult, contemporary romance, romantic suspense, and paranormal romance. All the kissing is what I want.
And Heather's turn.
Hi, I'm Heather. Let's see. I write new adult and adult contemporary romance, and I have a series coming out starting in February through Source Books, and it's been nicely titled as 3 Alpha Men and a Baby, so I'm really excited about that. As a mentor, I'm looking for anything kissing as far as adult or new adult books go, romance, whether it's romantic suspense or paranormal, fantasy, anything like that. So that's me.
I'm Jason Nelson. I write as JC Nelson. I write fantasy and urban fantasy. I have 2 series from Ace. One is called the Grim Agency series, and my most recent book is called The Reburialists. And I'll be looking for fantasy, science fiction, adult. I guess you could technically have a new adult fantasy, but I'm not really sure what it would be. Kissing's okay as long as there's less of it than there are bodies and explosions and spells.
Hi, I'm Jenny Nash. I am the author of 8 books of contemporary fiction and memoir published by Penguin and other Big 5 publishers. I'm also a book coach, and my clients regularly land top agents and Big 5 publishing deals. I'll be mentoring memoir, adult, obviously, memoir, and also either contemporary or historical fiction.
Hi, I'm JR. I am a adult and new adult contemporary romance writer, and I also write romantic suspense. I'm repped by Stacey Donaghy at Donaghy Literary, and I'm looking for adult contemporary romance and romantic suspense.
Hi, I'm Laura Brown, and I'm a new adult romance writer. And my first new adult novel came out this June, Signs of Attraction. So that's kind of exciting. I will be mentoring new adult or adult romance, and my strength is in the contemporaries.
And hi, I am Layla. I write contemporary romance and romantic suspense. My debut, Single Malt, which is the first in a male-male romantic suspense series, comes out with Karina next February. So I am looking for pretty much anything with kissing that's not Outlander. So not historical, not time travel, but otherwise I'm pretty open as long as there's some thread of romance in it. It doesn't have to be central, but I do want to see a little bit of kissing. So.
Awesome. So as you can see, we have a really great group tonight, and I think you're in for a treat. If you're just joining us now, feel free to shoot a question over on Twitter with the hashtag AskMentor. Our lovely Twitter captain today, AC Thomas, is going to be fielding your questions for us. Ask anything. These guys are open books. So the first question tonight that we've gotten is from Brittany T. at RubyTuesday89. And it is, should we include trigger warnings on our subs? Anyone want to jump in on that one?
I do not have any triggers, so it's not important to me to do that. But maybe, I mean, if it has something, if there's rape or child molestation or anything that could be harmful to your readers, I think it probably is a good idea. I don't know if anybody else has any triggers and they want to jump in.
I have a weird one. I'm not an adult mentor, but just as an example of weird triggers, I worked on a nonprofit with the Ebola case when it came out. So I didn't realize it till I was reading Fifth Wave, and like Ebola came and killed like most of the world. But like, I don't do pandemic diseases, so this is where reading everyone's bios is really, really important. So just do your research, and I am sure you will find the answers. How about we do a general question real quick to get us started? So guys, what is the most important thing you guys are looking for in your submissions? Whether it's the query or the first chapter, are there certain things that you're like, wow, this is where the money's at? And we're going to start with JC.
So for me, it's all about voice. I can fix almost anything else. Plotting's easy. Characterization is almost always a function of what people want. But for me, you got to have a voice that just makes me forget I'm reading. I want to read all the way through the sample, bump up the end of the sample, and just hate you for not sending more. For me, that's exactly what I'm looking for in a submission.
I am not looking for any particular topic. I could almost care less about topic. If it's handled well, I will love it. And by handled well, I mean I want to see the story on the page. I want to see the emotion on the page. I want to see things unfolding on the page. If everything's happening off stage, or you're stingy with the emotion, or it's stuck in your head and not on the page, it's going to be really hard to help you in the period of time that we have. So I'm looking for that live presence of story on the page, no matter what the story is.
I'm just going to echo what JC said. For sure, for me, voice is huge. I want to be able to not realize that I'm even reading, and I just want to be grabbed by your characters. Pull me in at the first page.
I do want to echo the voice that everybody else has been talking about, because that is huge. But for me, I want to be able to connect to those characters. If you have that connection and you care about what's going on, then it opens up the door to be able to fix and tweak and improve. But without that connection, it's just harder. Not that that sounds poetic, but it is.
For me, that it fits what's on the wish list. I think that goes to all of us. It needs to be something that's on our bio, not something that's particularly excluded. Word count appropriate. 120K manuscript, if it's romance, is just not going to fly anywhere. So needs to be word count appropriate. And I want to see your main characters right off pretty, within that first chapter of what we're going to read. I want to see both of them, and goes to the voice thing. Get a sense of their voice and get a sense of how they're going to interact throughout the manuscript.
So just like Jason said, I can teach anything, but I can't teach voice. So if that's not there, there's not much I can do. And how do you know if your manuscript has voice? You don't really. Your voice is kind of like your accent. Everybody else can hear it, but you can't. So, I mean, get feedback with it. Get critique partners and betas to tell you if it's voicey or not. Characters, again, there's also something I don't want to see, and that's glaring grammar errors. If it looks like you haven't proofread it at all, I'm not going to be happy, and I probably won't read much because it shows me that you haven't put in the time.
For me, the biggest thing, I'm going to repeat what everybody else says. Pretty much you have to have that voice that pulls me in. Otherwise, if I can't connect to it, if I can't feel what they are feeling, then I'm not going to want to read on. And some things that I don't want to see right away is like a huge info dump. I don't want to know, and I don't want to see, I don't want dreams, and I don't want someone looking in the mirror, typical, those kind of things. Those are overdone, and those will make me stop reading right away. So.
Awesome. Those are great answers, guys. We just got a question on the Google Hangout, and so for those just joining, this one's from Pat Brown, and this is an important question. It's what hashtag are you supposed to use to ask questions tonight, and that is hashtag AskMentor. The Pitch Wars tag is just such a great community right now that the questions would get lost. So please use that hashtag, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can tonight. This next question, I actually think you guys will really enjoy. It's from Maxim Martineau. I apologize if I butcher people's names. And the question is, kissing, steamy scenes, fade to black, what are your preferences? And he put, for all, with a smiley face. So jump in whenever you want to talk about kissing and fading to black or whatever.
Fade to black is my nemesis. I don't want any fade to black. Though I did have somebody ask me if they don't feel secure in writing them, would that be something, and they want to write them, would that be something that I can help with? And yes, absolutely, that's something. But that's also something that I need to know. So you need to reach out to me at Twitter or something like that, because if I get your manuscript and I see that it's a sweet romance, I specifically said I didn't want that. So just make sure that it's clear that that's something that you want to work on as a writer. But I want open door sex scenes. The more graphic, the better.
I can jump. For me, I'm fine with the graphic sex scenes. I'm also okay if the fade to black is appropriate for the story. I think there are just some that I had read a manuscript earlier that it made sense that it was fade to black in that case, and I was okay with it, which kind of surprised me, but the writing was so good that I was okay with it. So I think in some cases it does make sense, but I'm also fine with the graphic as well.
So I'll take whatever's appropriate for the story. I've got stuff where there's fade to black. I've got a fairly hot one in my latest one. Yeah, it depends on what's right for what you're telling, and I really don't care as long as it fits the rest of your story. If the rest of it has been light and funny, and all of a sudden you're going to a hardcore graphic sex scene with cutting and all that, that's not going to be exactly right for the picture book audience. So let's just make it match.
Awesome. Anyone else want to jump in before we move on to the next one?
Oh, yeah, I do. Oh,
go ahead.
Okay. I love sexy times in books. I really do, but sometimes it's not always necessary. And sometimes, as long as there's that romantic built up, that tension, that for me sometimes can equal just as hot as some of the open door scenes. So I'm open to closed door and open door. I'm open to any kind of sexy times, or no sexy times, just kissing. So
I agree with Heather. I'm in the same boat. But the sex scenes have to move your story forward. It has to be about the development of the character's relationship. So it can't just be gratuitous for me, and it shouldn't be. Yeah. I'm not into like mechanics. Like for me, I love the steam. Yeah, just bring on the steam. Like, bring it on. But if it's a bit of fade to black, we can work on that. It depends on the story.
Bring on the steam. I love it. Our next question is from Abigail Isaac Fine. What are your thoughts on submissions that cross over genres, like women's fiction / romance? Any advice for pitching them? Let's start with Layla. Do you have an opinion on this?
I think we'll probably make a decision if I was to choose one where it sort of read like crossover, would be to, as we work on it, try and figure out what's the right category for it, because that's what an agent and that's what the publisher is going to want, is for it to go into one or the other. But if you're not quite sure, I'm not going to say no or say pass because you're not quite sure. We'll figure that out.
Awesome. Anyone else want to jump in on this one?
I just want to quick echo what she said, that it wouldn't make me pass on something. However, if it's a women's fiction novel, I am not the right mentor for that. So if you submit it to me and it is women's fiction, you've essentially wasted a sub, which is hugely important this year because we cannot swap behind the scenes. So if you think that your manuscript is between genres, get feedback on it from as many people as you can and read in the genres that you're thinking of submitting. Look at different books. Look at a straight women's fiction book. Look at a straight contemporary romance book, if that's what it is, or whatever, and see the differences, see how they relate to your book, and then apply it, because it is really, really important. There are mentors who take women's fiction and romance, but there are some who don't. And that goes for everything, science fiction and romance, or science fiction or fantasy, or whatever it is. So you just want to make sure that you are utilizing your subs as best as you can.
I wanted to jump in and say something about that as well. I think the advice Brighton just gave was very smart, and I would add on to that you should spend some time looking at agent websites and seeing what they are requesting and what they represent and what they want, because very, very few of them are going to be open to the genre crossover or genre bending. It's hard to sell, and if you're doing that, you want to make sure that you're conscious about that it's intentional, and that is actually one of your selling points, because you're going to want to know which agents are going to go for that or not, because otherwise you're just making it harder for yourself. So I would say absolutely do the research on the other writers in your competition, but also go on to agent websites, go on to 10, 20 websites and just see what they say when they say what they're looking for. Or you could look at Agent Query or Agent Tracker, one of the databases, to make that work a little easier.
Awesome. Piggybacking off of that question, I saw this on Twitter earlier. I think it might have been today or yesterday. Someone had asked, what is the definition of women's fiction and what is the definition of romance, and how are they different? Does anyone have a definition that they'd like to throw out there for people who may be confused?
So the one that I've been using is if the story is about the woman's journey, it's women's fiction. If it's about the couple's journey, it's romance. Obviously, there are exceptions to this, but that's the blanket definition that I can give in 140 characters.
I think, too, if it's romance, the general consensus is that it has to have a happily ever after or a pretty firm happy for now, whereas the women's fiction genre does not have to in that way. It is the woman's journey, and how it ends is appropriate to the journey. But if it's romance, it's got to have that HEA or an HFN at the end.
That's awesome. I didn't know that, so I learned something new today. The next question.
Wait, let me just jump in quick. If it's a couple's story, but it does not have an HEA or an HFN, it cannot be a romance. So classify it as a love story. Okay? Like Nicholas Sparks, he doesn't write romance. Okay? Because the romance readers are going to get very angry with you if you give them a book that does not have an HEA. And I am one of those readers.
So you heard it here, guys. Make sure you have those happy endings for romance, or you will get in trouble. We will come for you.
Yes.
And you mean happily ever after as in they live happily ever after with each other, not other better people.
Right, correct. Because in a romance, it's that couple. So in women's fiction, maybe she is, maybe she's dating this one guy through the whole thing, and he's a big jerk. And then she comes along and she goes off on the sunset by herself. Great. That's a fabulous story, but it's not romance. Or if she goes off with somebody else. Again, great for the characters, not a romance.
Awesome. Cool. The next question is, and I think we're all going to answer this one. It is, what are your thoughts? Well, no, it is what makes you request a manuscript and what makes you stop reading a manuscript. This is from Alyssa Dickey. And let's start with Heather. Heather, I don't think we can hear you. Nope, you're still muted.
Is that better?
Yes, there you are.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, so I think this kind of goes back to that one question that we had about what are we looking for right away. And for me, it talks about like the voice right away. If I can't connect with the voice, then I'm not going to want to really read on. And when I say connect, I mean like if it's just not something I'm feeling, bottom line. So then I probably will likely not read on. It's as much as you don't want to be subjective, you have to, in order to, feel like you're going to work on this story, so you have to be subjective. So that would, that's most of the time when I stop reading. When I, as far as what makes me want to read on, it's just if I can connect to it. So I hope that makes sense.
JC, do you want to go next?
Sorry, having a little bit of trouble here. Yeah, when I'm reading a manuscript, what makes me want more is I want to have a sense of, I know your main character, I've connected with them, I'm just getting a glimpse of where the story's going. And your voice has been so solid that I just, like I said before, I bumped up against the end of what you sent in, and I just got to know what comes next. Things that would make me stop are generally speaking, the classic writing errors. The first paragraph, first chapter that begins with a 2-page description of the hero's coffee maker, okay? Or 6 pages of backstory about the hero's second-grade teacher. Those are fantastic things for you to know, but unless the hero's second-grade teacher is now out to destroy the world, I don't want to hear about them. Keep your story moving. Give us the sense of your world, and just suck me in so I follow along.
That's some great stuff there. I agree. I want a narrative drive right from the very start. I want to be dropped into something that's happening. The ball is in play. It's not about to be put in play. It's not going to be put into play later. We're not going to talk about why it's put into play. The ball is in play right now. I want to see that from second one. The thing that would make me stop reading, other people have mentioned sloppy grammar, just not paying attention to the conventions of English, a sense that you haven't put a lot of work in, because we're going to put a lot of work in, and there's nothing worse than for an instructor than when the instructor feels like they're working harder than the students. So I want to see evidence that you have done your best to polish it up. And somebody asked a question I saw on the Twitter stream about how do they let us know what areas they feel like they might have weakness in and want help on. And some other of the mentors here were talking about, if there's a sex scene and you want help with that, absolutely say that. If you say, I feel like I'm having trouble, whatever it might be, with my chapter endings, with this character, with this subplot, put that in, because that makes us aware that you are conscious and aware of where your strengths and weaknesses are.
We talked earlier about we talked earlier about what we were looking for, so I don't want to spend too much time on that. But the things that would completely turn me off are, like JC said, info dumping. That is a pet peeve of mine when the story is not moving forward. And if the manuscript looks like you haven't really worked on your craft, so if there's a ton of telling, and there's a ton of filtering and things like that, I'm okay if it's peppered here and there because you've missed those here and there, but if it's really apparent in the first few pages that it's going to be a slog to read, I'm not going to read it. So those are the things that would really turn me off, that I would probably drop it after a few pages.
Everybody's really mentioning some really great stuff, and I echo a lot of them. For me, when I start reading, boils back to that connection thing. I need to connect to the characters. I need to feel like I have to know what's going on. And if I continue reading and all of a sudden it stalls or it drops off, that's going to make it harder to keep going. And being that I'm reading romance, I want to see that romantic connection, that romantic plot start to build up. And if it's taking too long, that might be a sign that maybe, the early part of the manuscript is a little weak and might need a little more work. But I definitely want that romance to kind of pull me along and make me have to read it and have to see the ending.
So for me, I want a good hook. I mean, voice, yes, of course, but there needs to be a little hook that makes it different, that makes it original. And that hook should feed into, like Laura said, the plot. I want to see what the plot, how it's going to fold out, that there's a lot more there than just being stuck in the character's head, too. As for what's going to make me stop reading, if there's head hopping, I'm out. That's probably the thing that drives me up the wall the most, is if, one paragraph it's in one character's point of view and the next paragraph it's in the next character's point of view. That should not be happening, generally speaking. Other mechanics, tense shifting, if the tenses aren't the same. And if there's a ton of inconsistencies, if your character has blue eyes, please let them have blue eyes throughout the novel. I understand that there might be one mess up here or there. I'm guilty of it myself, but I don't want them to have blue eyes on page 5, brown eyes on page 10, blue eyes on page 15. So, that's putting in the work to make sure you've got your novel and your characters consistent.
So what will keep me reading is voice, obviously, characters that I connect with immediately, humor, style is really important, and that's something that would make me stop reading as well. Not to say that there's anything wrong with how your novel is, but it just doesn't feel right for me. And then what Layla said about head hopping, huge pet peeve. Same with tense shifts. So that's like, past tense in one paragraph, present tense in another, or even within the same sentence, which is the worst. Head hopping, for those who aren't sure what it means, is especially if you're in third person point of view, it will come off, she did this and then he did that. But if you're in her point of view, you can't know what he was thinking or why he's doing something, so that needs to be shown. Again, here or there, it's not a big deal, but large chunks is a red flag. Same with grammar. Yes, they're easy fixes, but they're easy fixes, so they should have been done before they got subbed to us.
Perfect. So that should give you all a little bit of an idea of what that will turn them off completely and what they're looking for. So a lot of people have hopped on. Welcome to the show, guys. Remember, ask your questions at #AskMentor, and we will try to get to as many as we can tonight. Our next one's kind of fun. Whoever wants to jump in on this one, feel free. It is from Adrian_writes on Twitter, and it is, I feel like most of what I read in New Adult is heavy on sex. How important do you think the role of sex is in New Adult? Does anyone want to jump in on that one?
I will if nobody else is. I think it's as important as it is in any adult or new adult book. It needs to feed the plot. It needs to be consistent for the characters. It needs to move it along. True, new adult does tend to have more graphic sex, but that's not to say that it's the only new adult out there. I know lots that have they're sweet romances. There's no sex. I know some that have tame sex. So it's really across the board, and whatever fits best for your characters and your book.
Anyone else have an opinion on new adult and sex? No? Okay, so we're going to take a pause from the serious stuff, guys, and go a little fun. So I know you want to get to know these guys' personalities, too, because half the fun of being mentored in Pitch Wars is you get a new author buddy. So I'm going to ask you guys, if you had a superpower, what would it be and why? And we're going to start with Jenny.
It would totally be to be invisible so that I could eavesdrop on everybody's conversation all the time.
Jenny, that's a good one. I like that one. I was thinking time travel, but that's just because I love books with time travel in them, like romance books with time travel in them. So, like Time Traveler's Wife, obviously, I think that would be the best superpower ever. And invisibility. You can do both.
I think I'll go with an eidetic memory because my memory is not the best. And I think if I could just remember everything, that would make editing just such a smoother process. So I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, so I totally want one of the Hermione time turner things, just to get more than 24 hours in a day, basically. And then, other than that, one of the Jetson things that makes my food appear automatically, that would be great too. So
I would fly. I have dreams all the time that I can fly. Just think I could fly to all my friends that I know on Twitter. Just like that.
I would want to do teleportation so that I could just go wherever I want to go when I want to go. So, because I've never been on an airplane before, and I'm terrified of flying on an airplane. So if I would just get teleported where I need to go, then I would never have that problem.
I want a orbiting death cannon that I can use to blast people who park in the handicap parking spaces without a sticker.
I love you guys so much. Those are great. Our next question is for our romance mentors from Elmar. And she asks, if the hero and heroine don't meet in the first chapter, does that dissuade you from requesting more? Anyone in the romance genre want to take this one away or debate it with each other?
For me, if you don't meet both hero and heroine in the first chapter, sometimes it could be, a weakening because you want to see them come together. But if the character we are introduced to has a lot of intrigue, a lot of going on, and you've got a very strong plot that builds you along, or maybe there's even a hint of where and how the love interest is going to come in, then yeah, I keep reading. I might stop if in the next couple of chapters we still haven't met the love interest, because that's not really going to be a romance. It might make me think it's more of a women's fiction novel if we're not getting that romantic element right up front. But I think it can work in the right circumstance and the right story for them not meeting right away.
Anyone else want to hop in?
Yeah, I agree with Laura. I think that sometimes it's some of the things that some new writers struggle with, right, is where to put what scenes where and how to move the plot. And if you have a particular story where you feel that it makes sense for them to not meet, but are you dragging? Is it taking you forever to get there for no particular reason? Are there scenes that you can cut? You might want to look at that maybe. But it's not an absolute no for me if that's the case, but there has to be something driving the plot forward.
yeah, I would tend to agree that it's got to be. It's not an absolute no, but it's got to be a really compelling reason why that it's not occurring pretty quickly. So because we want to get a sense of how those two characters interact if they're going to be driving the romance is driving the story. So we need to see that quickly.
So I don't need to see it right away, as long as there's a reason for it. And another thing, it also depends on how long your chapters are. If your chapter is 10,000 words, yeah, we better see it by the end of that. But if your chapter is only 1,500 words, it might take a few. In Captive, for instance, my hero and heroine didn't quote unquote meet until the end of chapter 3, and then not even really, but there was a specific reason for that. So if you can give us a reason for it and make who is on screen very compelling, I'm totally fine with it.
Awesome. So since Pitch Wars, it involves a lot of revising. That's the main thing of Pitch Wars, is you're going to be mentored for a couple months revising your manuscript. So I want to ask everyone, what do you want your mentee to know about what it's going to be like revising with you? And let's start with JC.
So the answer to that's going to depend on what the manuscript actually needs. I've had mentees where what we really needed to do was sharpen the character's motivation and focus on delivering an ending that was a function of everything that came before it. And I've had other mentees where we needed to begin with basic line editing skills. So if that's what it is, then we go back and forth working in small samples until I'm confident that we have that down, and then we move up to larger samples. If it's plot and characterization, we may do character worksheets and explanations about your theme and that sort of thing so that I understand where it is you're taking your story. So.
That was all so well said. I would agree with all of that. It really just depends on what we see on the page. That being said, I push pretty hard. I'm pretty tough. I'm not afraid to ask you to axe 50 pages. I think you have to be pretty ruthless when you're getting stuff ready, and having that outside perspective come in and look at it in a fresh way might show you something you hadn't seen before. So I always say that I bring tough love to the equation, and that's not just the love, it's also the tough for sure. But it's hard to say until I see what's there, what we're going to do. But I'm going to make you work hard, that's for sure.
Yeah, I agree with these guys. I think, I'm here to support you and to help you with any questions that you have. But also I'm going to expect you to put the work in. Yeah, like I'm going to have to ask you to kill some darlings, and I think it's just all a matter of, I think mentees have to understand that we've picked you because we love something about your book and we want it to be better. So yeah, but I expect the person to work hard and not just be like, okay, I fixed it in like 2 days, an entire book, here you go. I'll be like, well, no, because I don't have time to read your book 5-6 times in 2 months. So I expect you to work just as hard as I do.
Everybody is mentioning some great stuff. I'm definitely a bit of a compliment sandwich. I love to put praise on the manuscript and point out the parts that I really love, because I feel that really does help in the revising process to know where your strengths are and see where things are coming across appropriately. But I'm also not afraid to let you know where it's lagging, where things need to be reworked. I'm not afraid of revision. And if I see those bigger picture revision areas, I'm going to point them out and I'm going to want to work with someone on them. So I'm looking for somebody that is not afraid to rip things up and rework things, because it's to get a better picture. And most of us up here, I know myself, I've seen just what can happen when you rip up a manuscript, and it's too good not to try.
So for me, I'll do, a full read and then, give the big picture comments, with pacing, plot, character, and some of the things that JC said, if character sketches are necessary. But also I really want to, at that point, sit down and come up with a game plan, because sometimes when you get these revisions back, I understand, and it was the same for me at one point, of it being very overwhelming. It's like, oh my God, I have to rip this apart, like Laura said, which may be necessary. But getting a practical way to approach it, and so it's not overwhelming to you, so that it's not a I'm gonna cry process, but try and make it manageable in the time we've got, so that you've got the best manuscript forward for the agent round.
So I'm going to ditto almost everything that everybody else said. It really varies every year with the mentees and the manuscripts. as far as what sort of process that we have to do. Usually, and I put these on my my blog last year when I gave my mentees homework. So they get homework after they get picked. They have to do a beat sheet, which helps with pacing, which I have yet to have a mentee who hasn't needed to do that. And then they do the editing tips and tricks, which I've already posted to the Pitch Wars feed, so you can be a step ahead if you do those. And then, you know, we go through big picture things and deal with that. But like Jenny, I am a tough love mentor. I am a straight shooter, and I will tell you like it is, how it is. Of course, I take into consideration if you need to have a little bit of softness, I guess. I will work with that, but it's definitely, I'm going to push you, and I want to make sure that you are, like I think it was JR who said it, putting in as much work as the mentors are. And it is a lot of work, so.
I think for me, as far as how I will be as a mentor, is I'm going to be like your best friend on one section, but yet I'm going to be the person that pushes you hardest. I'm going to be the one that tells you, you know, this, what works, what doesn't. I'll do like an editorial type note with the big overview of what I think works, what I think you need to adjust, and then I'll go through like a line edit with you. And you know, it really just depends, like everyone else has said, it depends on what the manuscript needs the most as far as how I'll approach it. But you know, no matter what, I will push you, and if I think something needs to be changed, I need a mentee who's going to say, okay, I'm up for whatever you want to, you know, whatever you say. So I need somebody who's going to work with me as much as I want to work with them. So.
Awesome, guys. You know, when I was a Pitch Wars mentee in 2014, I don't think I really knew what revision was until I got picked for Pitch Wars. So everything everyone's saying, guys, whether you get in or don't, I mean, take it to heart, because learning to revise is the greatest skill you'll ever learn as a writer. Because once you make it and get an agent or even an editor, which is, you know, the ultimate goal, revising still continues, and it is very intense. Our next question is from the hashtag, and it is thoughts on multiple POVs and manuscripts. Love them, hate them, how many voices are too many? Does anyone have a strong opinion about that? Jenny. I think you're still muted.
Yeah, sorry. I do have a strong opinion about it. I have very rarely seen a first-time author handle multiple POVs well. It's very hard to do, and if you haven't been published before and you're trying to pull off Game of Thrones, I mean, maybe you're like the 0.01% genius, you know, native genius who can do that, which is, if you are, more power to you. But if you're struggling, if you've got these massive spreadsheets and you can't even make sense of them yourself, it's really hard. So I tend to not choose to help first-time authors on them, just because I find it very rarely works.
I'll jump. Can I go ahead?
Go for it.
So dual point of view is probably favorite. I'm fine also with single point of view. I will say in romantic suspense or thriller, it is also common to have the bad guy's point of view. You might have that chapter, or you'll have a victim point of view. So that can be one of the other ones that's thrown in there, which is pretty usual. But generally, I'm fine with dual, fine with single, and if you do have one of those cases, like I said, in romantic suspense, fine with that as well.
Yeah, I agree with Layla. Like, I'm okay with dual point of view. And also, like, I think of, you know, books like The Good Girl, romantic suspense, that have a few different points of view in them. So I'm okay with it.
Awesome. Any more opinions that you'd like to share? No?
I will. I just want to say I prefer dual point of view, especially in romance when it's the male and the female. It's very hard to do especially like first person dual point of view. But that's what I write in, so I could, I have a strength in that, so I would be able to help that best as far as differentiating the voices and helping with that. I'll read one point of view too, but I really prefer two point of view, so that's just me.
Yeah, the last trilogy I wrote is a dual POV fantasy western, and what I would say is you need however many number of points of view you need to tell the story, but every single one of them had better have a purpose. And if I cut all of the dialogue tags and beats, I'd better know who's talking just from reading your dialogue. If you haven't done that, you're not ready for a dual or multi POV.
And two,
That's great advice. Sorry, go ahead, Linda.
As someone who writes male-male romance, if you are doing dual point of view, even if it's not in romance, if you have two characters of the same gender, make sure you still distinguish their voices. There are tricks to the trade of age differences, different places, different accents, but those two characters also need to sound distinct, particularly if they're the same gender.
Awesome. I think we're going to have time for one more Twitter question, and then I'm going to ask a question that I think a lot of us want to hear, but this one's from Jordan Bellamere, and he says, "Hi all, is there anything you wish you knew about the agent/publishing process before you went through it?" And let's just open up for dialogue. I've had them mute themselves because we were having feedback problems, but I think, fingers crossed, it looks like it's settled itself. So if everyone wants to just go for it and have a chat, I have given you permission to mute yourself. Anyone want to start? Brighton.
Oh, great. I knew you were going to do that.
Well, you're just so knowledgeable and wise that,
Yeah, right. I don't know that I'd want to know anything, and I know that's not really a great answer, but sometimes it's better to not know and to jump in, because it can be a little daunting when you know sort of the ins and outs and what happens behind the scenes. So I wouldn't have wanted to know anything differently.
As someone who is Excel phobic, Query Tracker is your friend. It is a great program where you can kind of keep track online of who you've submitted to and what your responses are without having to use an Excel spreadsheet.
I agree with that. I hate Excel, and I used Query Tracker, and it saved me big time.
I'm going to answer this one even though I'm not an adult mentor. I'm a YA one. But I wish I knew it was always going to be hard. For some reason, I thought it would get easier, and that is not true. And I think everyone needs to prepare themselves mentally that it's always going to be this journey. And maybe when you get to like multi-million-dollar best-selling author land, maybe it gets easier. But I have a sneaking suspicion it's probably still going to be really, really hard. Because you always have, editors and publishers and marketing and but it's fun. So, anyone else want to speak into this?
Yeah, I just want to say I wish I knew how to be patient, to gain patience, because I wanted everything to happen right away, and when it didn't happen right away, it was so frustrating, and I was like, what am I doing wrong? And the self-doubt was horrible. So I'm constantly like, if only I would have had patience, then things, I went through several bad experiences before I got my agent. And if only I would have been a little more patient, then, things could have gone differently for me. But that's my biggest thing, is have patience. It's tough as it is. So
I would add something to that. I help quite a number of authors at the agent pitch stage and go through it with a lot of people, and a mistake that a lot of people make is that they forget that they are the boss of the agent, and when they get offers of submission, they're so excited that they forget to stop and ask questions or ask how that agent works or what their process is like or what the vision for their book is. And you really want to have an agent who is aligned with your vision of your career and your vision of your books. I've had a number of clients make really devastatingly horrible mistakes because they chose the wrong agent, and they chose the agent for the wrong reasons. And maybe it was a big famous agent and they just were blinded by the shiny, glittery, shiny thing out there. But to remember that you're looking for someone to work with you and help your career. So you want to be mindful enough. I mean, it's so exciting when you get an offer of representation, and the instinct is to just be like, woohoo, where do I sign? But I always counsel people to remember that you have power and you have choice, and to use that.
Man, I wish I had your advice earlier, because I totally was one of those authors who got, the multiple offers of representation, and I totally had a mental breakdown, did not know how to pick an agent, and I'm now on my second agent, and it's working out great now, but I wish I had done it differently, and so that's good advice right there, for sure.
Well, and a lot of authors, I've had 3 agents throughout my career. A lot of authors don't stay with the same agent. They get disenchanted. I mean, you really need to be, it's like, it's not buyer beware. It's something else. It's writer, the only person you can trust is yourself until you have built up a trustful relationship. And I'm not saying agents are bad or evil. They're not at all. They're usually all wonderful people who love books as much as we do, but you've got to have the right fit and the right personality.
It's almost like dating. Date your agents, guys.
Totally.
Anyone else have any opinions on the publishing process and things you wish you knew?
I think that I wish I had known that someone is always going to hate your book, and you in the continent you came from. There is nothing you will ever do, ever, that will make everyone love your book, so don't try.
One thing I noticed is that, being in the querying, being in the trenches, that's just one step of the process. But getting an agent is another step. And then landing a publisher is another step. And then landing the next sale and the next sale. You're still just at the beginning of that journey. And once you get an agent, that's not the magic crystal ball. That's just the next step in the process. And I think one of the other things to just keep in mind is once you get through those steps, that's not going to take away that self-doubt. Authors have that, and it doesn't go away. And the only other thing I want to throw out there is one of the most exciting things for me was getting that call. And when that happens to you, just, pay attention to it and mark it up, because there's plenty of other good things to come, but there's just something so special about that, and I still like to look back on it. So just, kind of hold on to that, because that's a moment.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Actually, the other night, someone said a quote, and I was like, I need to have that embroidered on a pillow, printed on a mug or something. And I think tonight's quote, JC, everyone will hate your book, or someone will hate your book at some point. I love that. I mean, that is harsh but true.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I hope you guys are taking notes, because that piece of advice will travel well for a very long time. So we have time for one last question, and this one is, what is your number one piece of advice for writers trying to make it? And everyone's going to answer it, and we're going to start with Jenny.
I guess I'm unmuted. Okay. My number one piece for writers trying to make it is, oh no, what happened?
You're still there.
There was like a weird noise. Do your homework. So study the competition, study the agents, read a ton of books, go to bookstores, talk to librarians, talk to your readers. Don't just sit in a room by yourself and read. You've got to look up and look at where the world of your book is, where your book is going to be in the world when it goes out there. And a lot of writers are afraid to think about the marketplace because this is a work of their heart. But as soon as you are published, it's a product just like toothpaste, and it's going to be sold just like toothpaste. So you might as well know how toothpaste is sold and That's the number one thing I think people should do.
My advice would be constantly work on your craft, constantly try to be better as a writer, reach out to CPs, betas, keep learning the craft, workshop, take classes, and just constantly strive to get better and keep working on it.
Mine would be to be open-minded. There's so much information out there and everything else, and you've got something you've written that is so special and powerful to you. But if you can't listen to suggestions or criticism, you're not going to be able to improve. You're not going to be able to grow. So even if someone makes a suggestion or makes a comment that on the outset doesn't feel like it really clicks, keep it in mind. Think about it. If it clicks, work on it. If it doesn't click, well, at least keep it there. And also keep in mind that if 2 or more people are saying the same things, it's time to revisit that concept, and it's time to look at it with a fresh set of eyes.
Yeah.
For me, I would say keep writing, and also don't get tunnel vision. I know some people tend to, they love that project. They just want to keep on that project, But, it might not be your first manuscript that sells. My first one, got a Golden Heart nomination, but it was the second one that sold. So you just keep going and don't get too tunnel vision on a single project to the detriment of your career and going forward, of understanding that it might not be the first manuscript. It might not even be the second manuscript that sells. So keep your options open.
So I have a couple. First, read in your genre that you write in. You can stay up on trends that way. You can see patterns that happen. You can find where you fit in the marketplace. If you fit in the marketplace, if you need to change direction or move to something else. And second, and most importantly, find your tribe. Your writer friends will be the only thing that keeps you sane on this journey, because it is hell. I mean, it really, really is. There are days, it's a roller coaster. There are the highest highs and the lowest lows, and if you don't have a tribe with you to support you and listen to you bitch and complain about that review that's horrible, because you don't want to talk about that online, or any questions that you have with anything, with an agent or an editor or a manuscript or anything at all, you need to have people that you can talk to about it.
I'm going to copy what Brighton says, and you really have to find that group of people that you can connect to, your critique partners, your beta readers. That is the best advice that you can have. And then also another thing for me is try not to write in trends. I mean, I know certain things sell and certain things don't, but you've got to write what's in your heart. Otherwise, you're not going to feel it. So if you want to write something that's not selling right now or whatever, just write it. Write what feels good to you.
Yeah, I completely agree with Heather. The last thing I wrote, or the thing I'm writing right now, is old style urban fantasy with ghosts, which is like a market graveyard. But that's okay. I mean, write the story you love. Write the story that you're going to read over and over and over as you revise it. Because if you won't read it over and over again, why should I?
This is why I love you guys. You guys are all like super profound, wise, insightful people, and it has been a sheer pleasure talking with you all tonight. We are at the end of our time. Thank you, everyone, for asking questions. Thank you to the wonderful mentors here for sharing your opinions and the things you've learned in the past. If you have asked a question on #AskMentor and it wasn't answered tonight, don't worry. Other mentors, even these maybe, will go on Twitter and we'll try to tweet you, get your questions answered. If you have a specific question, feel free to tag, these lovely people. We don't bite. They're obviously all super friendly and nice and awesome. Brighton needs to show her name tag. Speak so it goes to you.
Hi.
See, right as rain. Go tweet
the
her.
underscore is very important. The non-underscore right as rain does not like to be bothered.
Ooh, good to know. They probably don't like all the kissing romance stuff either, then, huh?
No, she gets really testy about it.
Oh no!
I forgot to do my super awesome commercial. So there's Pitchworth swag, everyone. If you are just wanting to support the Pitchworth community further beyond donations, Laura has a great shirt.
Oh, I haven't gotten mine yet.
Oh yeah, they're coming in the mail for some people who've ordered them.
I'm
mugs,
in Canada.
And new designs are being released by Riders Life Apparel, who's teamed up with Pitchworth this year. Those designs will be released, I think, August 3rd, so keep an eye out. Go follow Riders Life Apparel, follow all of these awesome people, and you know what? May the pitch be with you. I hope you tune in next week for some more awesome interviews. Have a great night, guys.
Thanks, Nikki.